All praise is due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessings which He bestowed upon us, all of us. The khutbah today will be different than the normal rhythm of pointing out flaws of this nation. And the reason for that is the younger generation I'm seeing here today that are usually in school. طابع الخطبة اليوم سيكون مهيئا أو مخصصا للفئة العمرية الصغيرة من أبنائنا وبناتنا الشباب والشابات، فهي فرصة قلما تقدم. So we will be talking specifically about this generation coming up and how they can possibly change the future so they can have a better reality than the one we are living in today. For each one of you, you got your whole lives ahead of you. There's a few pieces of advice that each and every one of you should think about growing up. The first one, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you something that's within you that you will excel at. Not everybody was born to be an engineer, and not everyone was born to be a doctor, and not everyone was born to be a merchant. Why do we say this? Wandering aimlessly, doing the routine things as you grow up, into teenagehood, then into early manhood, then into manhood. Looking at others and wanting to replicate the experience causes chaos. Some of the younger generation here, Allah has put in them the ability to be politicians. Others, doctors. Others, engineers. Others, merchants. But the main thing is, you have to find what you're good at and what you were intended to do. Because once you find that secret that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put deep inside you, you will actually excel in what you're doing. All of the students, all of the younger generation, do not just wander aimlessly into routine. The few generations that have passed, we made this mistake. So for our fathers and us, we have made those mistakes. And nobody told us early on that you cannot just look at a successful merchant and say, I want to be that, when you don't have the skills to be one. Rest assured that Allah has put in each and every one of you, and I'm specifically talking to the younger generation, there's something that you were meant to be not just good at, to be unique, to be looked upon. And you have to find what that thing is. وجب عليك أن تعلم ماذا هيأ الله فيك. Why does it hurt? Because at this age you have the choice. When you're in your 40s, stuck in a job that you're barely making average on, and wondering, where did I go wrong? It's at this time that you went wrong. That you did not try to discover what's within you, what is good and strong about you. And the social peering. You looked at somebody who was good at academia, and you got angry. I want to be good at academia too. Maybe you were not meant to be a scholar, but maybe you were meant to be one of the biggest merchants in your area. And when you are that merchant in your area, when you are that looked upon doctor, when you are that looked upon physicist, when you are looked upon as that mathematician, then this Muslim community can have an impact. And there's a saying, doctor, when you are that looked upon physicist, when you are looked upon as that mathematician, then this Muslim community can have an impact. And there's a saying, there were scholars when Hitler became to power, the Jewish scholars and scientists who were well renowned back then fled Germany. And they were not only accepted, but called upon by the West and by America in particular. Dr. Teller, the inventor and the main scientist behind the atomic bomb and the Manhattan Project under Oppenheimer and General Groves, invented the atomic bomb, and 2 years later invented the hydrogen bomb. 70% of those scholars were Jews that fled from Germany. And at that time, the wealthiest bankers in the world, the Rothschilds, were also Jews. And the people who controlled economies were Jews. Look at our societies here in Memphis as a sample. What do we all do? What are our dreams? How many, and when I say kids, I don't mean that in a bad way because all the kids are like my children. How many kids here want to become a judge on the Supreme Court? How many want to be the Attorney General or Secretary of State or even the President? How many here wants to be one of the renowned bankers of the world? How many in here wants to be the attorneys that finally go into the international court and sue the UK for all the damage and suffering Muslims have gone through antagonizing pain for the last 125 years? What are the ambitions? This is a large community, one of many communities spread throughout the US. And I've been to quite a few of them. Why don't we have young men and young women in separate groups coming together for a common goal and say, I think I want to be a politician and I want to study politics? And why don't we have a group similarly that says we want to go into medicine, and a third group that wants to go into physics, and a fourth that wants to go into chemistry, and a fifth that wants to go to math, and a sixth that wants to go to economy, law? When we have those skills, then we will not be looked upon as just numbers. If we actually ask those questions to my children, 18 and under, the answer might shock and disappoint you. You're angry at what's going on in the world. Another nationality that had a running for president in this past election. And now they're in the Senate, they're in Congress, and they even got to be ruling the UK. They learned, they observed, and they practiced it. And their boys and girls, they taught them how to be strong, how to be powerful. John Nash, a mathematical physicist, there was a movie after him. I think it was called Beautiful Mind. And he also was a theorist, a social theorist, who said, in a group setting, the group does best when every member of the group does what's best for them. but yet there's still a group. That's how people control societies, the political landscape, and eventually can run not only cities, not only towns, but they can run the world, like what we're seeing now. What's going on now, and we've spent many khutbahs talking about this sad reality that we live in. You want to do something about it? I'm talking to my children, especially my children. You want to do something about it? Find out what Allah has put in you. Find out what you're good at. Do not copy anyone or anything. Know that there's a special talent inside of you that you have to find it. Most people do not find that until they're well in their 40s, and sometimes even beyond that to the 50s. Say, I wish when I was 16 or 17, I made this choice. Now you have the time, but when you're 50, it's too late. And once you pursue it, this string is like a magnet that comes to the best, to the brightest, most knowledgeable, wealthiest. If you dream to own a convenience store or a gas station, there's nothing wrong with that. But if that's what your ambition is, and that's the top of your dreams, have a Benz and a couple of $1,000s in the bank, and that's it, then you're just replicating what our generation and the generation before us and the generation before us did. في مضمار هذا التفكير. Why don't we have 20 different unions here? Doesn't have to be official. 5 kids who say we want to be politicians. They come together and somebody volunteers and starts putting them on that path. Others, they want to go into scholarly studies. We have a lot of brain power in here, and we sure can help. Strength. Strength. My children, the younger ones, respect to all of you, my brothers and my fathers and my elders, and my sisters, of course. But you have an opportunity to change the sad reality we live in. Planet. 25 years. Why don't we learn? When are we going to learn? The scientist that forced the UK to promise them the land of Palestine was because the UK needed them and borrowed money from them. And they ran their courts, they ran the schools. And then we have a question to us, our generation, 40s. There's something called school boards, and there's something called mayorship. Throughout the US, we almost have no representation whatsoever, 2 or 3. This is a real thing. We keep talking about the bad reality, but at some point you have to give a pathway. If you think money is, it's been so altered in the name of Islam. Take all the verses of the Quran, and every verse that talks about jihad starts with money. But how can you do that if you don't have it? And when you say you have it, we're not talking about a few bucks here and there. We're talking about the actual wealth that can change realities. اللهم ردنا إليك ردا جميلا اللهم ارحم المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات. اللهم كن مع المستضعفين في كل مكان. اللهم كن مع أهلنا في فلسطين وفي سوريا وفي العراق وفي اليمن وفي لبنان وفي السودان وفي الهند وفي كل مكان يضطهد فيه عبادك المسلمون يا رب. اللهم علمنا ما جهلنا وذكرنا بما نسينا وانفعنا بشبابنا وارفع بهم راياتنا وارفع بهم آمالنا وغير بهم حالنا وردنا من هذا الحال إلى أحسن حال. عباد الله، إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأنت يا أخي أقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء